which is the, okay, so that's now being recorded. So apologies to everybody. And we will try and get it up on Facebook as soon as we possibly can. I don't know what they've got against us, but I did read something to say that they particularly make it difficult for left-wing things. So, okay, and just if everybody's got their mics off, that'd be great. And just an introduction, I'm Sarah Glynn from Scottish Solidarity with Kurdistan, and welcome to our 13th Kurdish Tuesday, where we're going to be looking at the Kurds and Europe. And we've got two speakers, but our first speaker is an MEP who's got to go off and vote very shortly. So I'm not going to do, I'll just do the absolute minimum of introduction for Nikolaj Villumsen, who's an MEP from the Danish Red-Green Alliance. He's Vice President of the European United Left, Nordic Green Left, and he's a board member of the EU's Kurdish Friendship Group. So hand over straight to you, Nikolaj, if you can unmute and join us.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you for the invitation to speak here today. I'm sitting in Copenhagen, as we have been told to stay home due to the huge spread of coronavirus taking place in Brussels right now. So, but that doesn't mean that I do not have to vote. So we will have online voting. So that's the reason why I will have to leave you before the end of the meeting. But my good friend Fayik is also with you. So he will surely be a much wiser person than me after I have left to tell you about the situation. Just to introduce myself, as Sarah said, I'm a member of the European Parliament. I'm elected for the Red-Green Alliance in Denmark. I'm vice president of the left group in the European Parliament. And before I was elected to the European Parliament, I was for 8 years a member of the Danish Parliament from my party, working very much also with the Kurdish issue and solidarity with the Kurds. And perhaps it makes sense, I think, for you probably are all here because you're interested in the Kurdish question, but I think it makes sense perhaps also just to say a few words about why I think the Kurdish issue is important. I have been engaged in the issue actually almost since I started doing politics when I was 14 years old, and as you can see, I don't have much hair left, so it's quite some years ago. That was the time when the Kurdish leader Abdullah Öcalan was being imprisoned, and in Aarhus, the next biggest city in Denmark, there was demonstrations against the imprisonment. So that was where I got it became clear to me that there was a Kurdish issue, and that there was something that some people that needed our solidarity. I was also the first member of European Parliament to visit the liberated areas in Rojava back in November 2014, and I have been election observer in Turkey many times. And I had the honor of being called a terrorist by President Erdogan when we criticized the fraud taking place at the referendum where he was clearly not following international or Turkey's election law or international standards. So I have been working with the Kurdish issue, and I have not stopped doing that since I got elected to the European Parliament. And that's also, as Sarah said, where I'm part of the Kurdish Friendship Group within the European Parliament, and working to promote solidarity with the Kurdish people within the European Parliament. And there is surely a need for strong solidarity with the Kurdish people. Why is the Kurdish question an important question? I think there are actually three reasons as I see it. The first, I think, reason why everybody needs to be aware of the Kurdish question and take it seriously is that it simply is impossible to understand the situation in the Middle East if you do not take into account the Kurdish question. The Kurds are playing an important role in so many countries in the Middle East. So I think many people are aware and used to thinking that that the Palestinian issue is fundamental to understanding the situation in the Middle East. I think that the Palestinian issue is fundamental to understanding of the situation in the Middle East, but one can also not understand the situation in the Middle East if one do not understand the Kurdish question. So that is like the first reason. The second reason that I think is important is that the Kurds are, as I think you all know, the biggest people without a state. And I think everybody who is in favor of the right to self-determination and the rights of people, and I think people in Scotland can recognize that that is an important issue. And we as a small country in Denmark also know that that is an important issue. So that's the second reason. And the third reason that I, as a left-wing socialist, thinks that the Kurdish issue is so important is that I think we should not underestimate that the Kurdish movement is I think one of the strongest progressive movements that we have in the world today. And that is not only when we look into the Middle East, it's also when we look to and compare the strength of the progressive Kurdish movement with the movements in other parts of the world. So that is, I think, the three reasons why one should really care about the Kurdish issue. I don't think I'm preaching to the choir when I'm speaking to you, but at least that is also like why something that I think is important to say why I think that the issue is so important. Then what to do? I think that when we look at the Kurdish issue, it's clear that a huge problem for peace, stability, and progress for the Kurdish people, but actually for the Middle East in general, is President Erdogan. And one cannot underestimate the negative role that he's playing, not only in Turkey by oppressing the Kurds and the rest of the peoples of Turkey, but also that he's playing by invading Syria, that he's doing in northern Iraq and the Kurdish areas there. So I think that the main issue that we can do in order to stand in solidarity with the Kurds is to put pressure on President Erdogan. And something that I meet often when I have this debate about Erdogan, I think, is that people claim that Erdogan is totally out of reach, that he is like this lunatic that you cannot reach, and it doesn't matter what we do in Europe, he will go on and do his things anyway. And I think that it's very important to be aware that Erdogan is not that strong. Erdogan is in fact quite weak. The people of Turkey is not that fond of him, and he needs to be extremely aggressive. He needs to be extremely cruel and brutal in order to stay in power. So that's the first thing that makes him weak, but of course also very brutal. The second thing that I think is important to be aware is also that Europe has potentially a huge influence over Erdogan. Erdogan is totally dependent on the economic agreement that he has with the European Union. Turkey is in large part an integrated part of the internal market of the European Union, like looking into the German car industry, getting a lot of parts made in Turkey. Cheap labor there plays a huge role for big European industries. And you can probably remember, but when Turkey shut down a Russian airplane over Syria, there was a economic sanction imposed by Putin, and I think that the export percentage of the export from Turkey going to Russia is about 10% of the Turkish export, and quite shortly afterwards, then Erdogan stopped and reversed his policy totally due to the pressure coming from Putin. For if we look at the export from Turkey to the European Union, that is it's much higher. I think it's more than 30%. So it's just to say that claiming that Erdogan is so strong that he's out of reach of Europe is false. If there was the political will in Europe to impose be that direct sanctions on the perpetrators of human rights violation and violations of international law in the Turkish government, including Erdogan, if there was the will to put into question the association agreement between Turkey and the European Union until and to freeze that until the violations and crackdown on democratic opposition within Turkey stopped, then Erdogan would be on his crying knees in a few days. That would be at least my assessment of the situation. So there is huge possibilities in Europe to put pressure on President Erdogan, and putting pressure on President Erdogan is key in order to get a more peaceful and more democratic development, not only in Turkey, not only in Kurdistan as a whole, but also in the Middle East in general. So the question is more: is there a pressure is there will to put pressure on Turkey? And of course that is where the problem comes in. I think we in around a year ago, when we had the invasion of northeastern Syria, when the Turkish army invaded there, I think actually we managed to get the strongest decisions so far in the European Parliament, but decisions on foreign affairs in the European Parliament are not binding. But anyways, we had Fayik was also engaged in helping us in those negotiations. But I think that there we called for targeted sanctions on the perpetrators of human rights and war crimes in Turkish government. We call on the European Union to consider temporary suspension of the association agreement if needed to stop Erdogan. So this was some very strong wordings that we actually gathered a broad majority behind. Unfortunately, that didn't lead to action from the European Union. I think we should not underestimate that, as I also talked about, that there's the potentially very strong possibility of the European Union to put pressure, not least economically, on Erdogan, but of course there's also big economic interests in Europe that like to have cheap labor making spare parts to the German car industry. So it's not an easy fight, but something that I think is extremely important in why we need to continue to push for pressure on Erdogan and support for the Kurdish and pro-democratic movement in Turkey, is that I think something that really strikes me every time I've been visiting Turkey, and I have done that many times, both for the Newroz New Year's celebration and for election observations and several other things. That is that when we hear news from Turkey, we often hear these terrible news, like our colleagues from the HDP left-wing party being put into jail. We hear thousands of political prisoners, a brutal civil war going on, huge oppression against the trade unionists, against lawyers, all these things, and that is terrible. But at the same time, having visited Turkey, having visited the Kurdish areas in Turkey, what strikes me every time is that there is such a huge will of the people to fight Erdogan. I think many other countries, the people would have given up long time ago if they were facing imprisonment, if they were in and out of jail. But like the Kurdish movement, pro-democratic and HDP movement is not giving up, and I think we owe to them to continue our fight for solidarity, because they are the key to a more secure and more democratic Turkey, but also Middle East and of course also development in Kurdistan. Then like, what are we up to more concretely in the Kurdish Friendship Group? Just to let you know, today we send a letter to the chair of the to the President of the European Parliament that was signed by 69 members of the European Parliament, calling for him to take action against the violations of human rights taking place in northeastern Syria, in the occupied areas where Turkish military and Islamic militias are violating human rights. That is not something that I'm just sitting and claiming. That is something that the Human Rights Council of the United Nations have reported on. So that is something that cannot be questioned, that it's taking place. So what we need there, of course, is what we're calling on him to do is that as soon as the coronavirus allows it, to send a delegation from the European Parliament to see the situation on the ground. I think that is important in two ways. First of all, of course, it's important in order to document and spread the news about the violations taking place. Secondly, it is extremely important that we push for a diplomatic recognition of the autonomous administration in Rojava and in the liberated areas of Syria, because that is the key in order to secure that they are not just being sold out by the Americans or a puzzle in the game between Russia and Turkey and Iran, but that they are recognized as our allies in the fight against the Daesh, where they have played a crucial role, and that they should be that this progressive movement that I saw with my own eyes when I visited Rojava back in 2014, that this progressive movement is also the key for a more peaceful and democratic Syria in the future. Sarah, I have been speaking now for a while, and before I leave, I think I owe to you to give you the opportunity to ask me a few questions or comments or complaints about what I have done so far before I run away and vote.
Does anybody from the floor have any questions? Or, well, I could ask you a question. Would you want to say something about the pressure that, well, a couple of things, I suppose, that the pressure with the refugees, you know, as threatening to open the gates, I suppose. I mean, Turkey is the policeman for Europe, for Fortress Europe. And also what's been happening in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Yes, of course. I think that that is two crucial points that we need to touch upon. First, I think that the European Union is making itself extremely weak by not making sure to have a distribution of refugees arriving to the European Union based on solidarity between the member states, and by not having that, the European Union places itself in a situation where it's pursuing an extremely cruel, but also extremely short-sighted policy where it's relying on Erdogan to be the border guard of the European Union, but also like militias in Libya that are clearly also violating human rights, and I think that is something that allows the European Union to be blackmailed by Erdogan, and I think it's quite clear that what's going on is that Erdogan is not hesitating by using people on the run from extreme oppression and violations that he can use as a tool to try to get money from the European Union that he needs in order to try to mitigate the economic crisis taking place in Turkey. So I think that the refugee deal with Turkey is a disgrace. I think that it is terrible that we are not demanding that Turkish government live up to their commitment to the Human Rights Convention of the Council of Europe that they have committed to before we start giving money to Erdogan as unfortunately it's happening right now. That was like on the refugee situation. Secondly, then there is the escalation that we see in the Eastern Mediterranean, and actually that we're also seeing, I think, in Nagorno-Karabakh, where there's also like big powers on play. Azerbaijan is a close ally of Turkey, and it's clear that Turkey's forces are playing a role. And I think that Erdogan is clearly exploiting the weaknesses of the European Union. He's trying to position himself. We talked about like being the border guard in between Greece and Turkey, but of course his engagement in Libya will also allow him to play a huge role there. And at the same time, it's clear that he's having conflicts with Russia that is also spreading into Armenia and Azerbaijan. So I think it's, when we talk about, if we go back a bit and we talk about like how do we make sure that nobody's forced to flee, the best thing we can do is to avoid conflict and avoid that people are being put under oppression or being bombed or killed in wars. And like it's clear that Erdogan is creating refugees, he's creating tension, he's creating a situation where people are forced to flee. And I have seen it with my own eyes. I was in Diyarbakir, or Ahmed, the biggest Kurdish city in Turkey. I was there when just after the peace process had ended, that Erdogan ended, and I was standing listening to the shooting taking place in the old parts of the city, where like houses were demolished and tens of thousands of people were forced to flee. So if people are sitting in Europe and they think, how can we make sure that people are not forced to become refugees and come to Europe as refugees, the best thing one can do is to not allow Erdogan to create refugees, not to allow Erdogan to bomb civilians in northern Iraq, to bomb civilians and do ethnic cleansing that's taking place in northeastern Syria, and not to allow Erdogan to oppress the people of Turkey and put his political opponents into jail. So there is this conflicts and refugees he's making, and I think one should not underestimate that all these things, from the Hagia Sophia to his adventures in Eastern Mediterranean, is of course a power play, but also a power play of a weak man that needs to distract the attention of the Turkish public away from a situation that with a worsening economy and a terrible handling of the pandemic, so Erdogan is in his own way always playing this extremely cruel, extremely brutal power play. He was before Trump, but he has, I think, some Trumpish ways of acting that is perhaps difficult to understand, while at least you sit here in peaceful Denmark. But that is the reality, and we really need to stop that.
Thank you. Do you have time for one more question, or have you got to go?
Let's take one more question before we leave the floor to Fayik, and much wiser words from him.
Hanifi, do you want to?
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nikolaj. Great to listening to you and hearing what you are doing for supporting democracy in the Middle East in general and the Kurdish movement. One thing is very important. All other things are also important, but one thing is much more important than the rest. That is recognizing the Kurdish movement or the Kurdish administration in Syrian Kurdistan. And of course, the international community is very state-centric. Everything is about states. So even the United Nations do not provide like healthcare materials to the administration in Rojava, because they think they have to go through the Syrian state. So considering your work in the parliament in Denmark or in the European Parliament, how do you see if there is a change or a shift happening in this state-centric political understanding within the international community and among the politicians in particular. So do you think it is happening anytime soon? Will we hear any state or any intergovernmental organization recognizing the administration in Rojava, or you don't think that's a chance? Thank you.
Thank you, Hanifi. I think that I would wish that I could say to you that there's a good move in a good direction, and that there will be recognition of the liberated areas in Syria. But I would say that I think it's not an easy battle, but it's something that we should really fight for, and I think we should try to use the leverage that we can have. I think, of course, it's clear that the crucial role that the Kurds and the Syrian Democratic Forces played in the fight against Daesh is something that I think everybody took notice of, and I think everybody is ashamed when they hear that we are abandoning our allies. Secondly, I think that there are also the question of that is being discussed quite a lot, that is war crimes taking place in Syria, war crimes of Daesh, and also the foreign fighters of Daesh and the prosecution of those people. And this is at least something that we're trying to push for in Denmark, that is to say to the Danish government, you need to take diplomatic contact to the authorities in the self-administration in order to have their input on specifically that the Danish foreign fighters who went and fought for Daesh, what crimes have they committed? And I think that can perhaps be a leverage, saying that don't you want to investigate the war crimes, then you need to take contact and work with the Kurdish authorities in Rojava. So that is I think a question that we should raise together with the solidarity with our allies. And then thirdly, I think that the question of refugees is also important, because like the Kurdish areas of Syria are hosting refugees from Syria. They're also hosting refugees. I was visiting a Yazidi refugee camp when I was in Rojava from where people have been fleeing from Sengel. So if people want to make sure that refugees are not forced to go to Europe, but they want to that they can live in the area close to where they were forced to flee from, then we also need to help. We need to recognize, and we need to make sure that aid is coming specifically to these areas. But I think it's not easy. Just to tell you one story, when I was in the Danish Parliament, we managed to force the foreign minister to send mining as a demining equipment, so to take away mines from Kobane after the liberation that ISIS or Daesh had placed, and they sent them, and that they were on the Turkish side of the border to Kobane, and they were standing there, but the Turkish authorities did not allow them to send them into to Kobane. And it's just to say that, like, it shows the level of brutality coming from the Turkish side, but it also shows the problems that even when we get these small victories, it's crazy that it's a victory that we need to fight for, that demining equipment should be sent away to Kobane after the liberation, but sent to Kobane after the liberation, but that was a huge fight. And then when we even got it, then Erdogan stopped it from arriving. So yeah, I'm not saying it's easy, but and that would be fooling you, but I think we really need to push for it, because I agree that it's key, but I think also we should also be aware that as long as the Kurds are there and like they are the reality on the ground, it's also something that is like that's not changeable, and that Europe needs to accept and acknowledge. So Fayik can tell you much more about all the threats Rojava when he will be speaking. And I'm not saying it's easy for our Kurdish friends there, but I'm just saying that it doesn't make sense to discuss if they are there or not. They are there, and they should be recognized and they should be helped.
Thank you very much. I think we probably should let you go and vote on whatever important thing you're voting on. And thanks. And I will, yeah, I promise we will share this recording once it's recorded and out.
Thank you for the invitation.
Say a few words. Whenever we don't have anybody, we know that Nikolaj is there, and he's with us always. Now at the European Parliament, before the European Council of Europe, and in his own parliament, everywhere. He is really a very, very important and very sincere Kurdish friend. I want to thank him as well to participate in this meeting. Thank you, Nikolaj.
Thank you, Fayik, and thank you for the invitation to be here with you. Take care.
Thank you. So, well, Fayik sort of introduced himself, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. So Fayik has the difficult job of trying to remind Europe, all these European politicians who aren't already supporting the Kurds, and most of them would rather probably think that the whole problem should just go away and be kept under the carpet, and Fayik's there to remind them that the Kurdish issue isn't going away, because he's the People's Democratic Party, the HDP, representative to the European institutions in Strasbourg. So that means not just the European Parliament, actually, but also the Council of Europe, which is an older thing and a broader thing. So it was started in 1949 and has 47 states to it, which includes Turkey and also includes the UK. So the UK will go on being part of that. And that's the organization that's responsible for the European Convention on Human Rights, for the European Court of Human Rights, and the European Committee for the Prevention of Torture. So anyway, Fayik's kept pretty busy, and I'm sure he'll tell us more about relations between Kurds and Europe. Fayik.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, friends, for inviting me. Yes, I was a teacher, then was put in prison and became a politician. So generally we say this prison is the school of politics for the Kurdish people. All Kurdish politicians should go through the prison in order to be a politician. As you now see, thousands of our friends are in prison in Turkey. And we believe that when they come out, they will be more professional politicians. So I also went through that way. So it's 21 years that I'm in Europe and always representing my party in the European institutions. I came in 1999 and started representing HDP, that time it was HADEP. Then it was closed down, DEHAP replaced it. Then DTP, then BDP, and now HDP. And I've been representing all these parties in the European institutions. I stayed in Brussels for about 8 years and then moved to Strasbourg. And now it's about 12 years that I'm in Strasbourg. So Sarah said that not only European Parliament, also the Council of Europe. I'm representing my party at the European Socialist Party as well. I'm a member of presidency at the European Socialist Party. I represent my party at the Socialist International. Many times as well, I was invited to the congresses and to the meetings of the European Left Party or different national parties. So I'm trying to raise the Kurdish issue in all these institutions, these political parties, congresses, meetings, etc. It is difficult because we are representing just the people. You know, the system of the world now is more depending on the states. In order to be present in a political, in a body, official body, for example, the United Nations, Council of Europe, European Union, you should have a state. if you don't have a state, then you should go to these institutions or go do something through some friends. So I am trying to create some friends in these institutions. This is my main activity that I'm trying to do. And Nikolaj is one of them. We have hundreds of friends in these institutions. So when we look at the relations of Europe with the Kurds and with Turkey, when we go to the history, you know, the European countries, some of European countries, of course, especially UK and France, decided on the future of the Middle East. And, you know, with the Lausanne Treaty, Kurdish people were deprived of having their own state. And the problem is going on even before Kurdistan was divided between Iran and Ottoman Empire. And with the Lausanne Treaty, it was again divided in between Turkey. That time, Britain was in Iraq, France was in Syria, and again divided, and now 4 parts. And always it is a source of problems in the Middle East. That's why we say without solving the Kurdish question, it's impossible to find a solution to the questions of Middle East, because it has been divided into 4. Each country have a lot of big powers behind themselves. They have different interests with different powers in the world. Sometimes one is using the Kurdish question against the other. Sometimes the big powers are using Kurdish question against some of the others. So always it is a source of problem. So in order to find a solution to the Middle East, we say that Kurdish problem should be resolved through a political and peaceful way. Of course, the European countries have created this status in the Middle East. So generally they don't want to change it. And this is the problem, because we want to change this status quo that the Kurdish people have been ignored. They are even not a minority, because the minorities also have some rights, but we do not have the rights of minorities. For example, the Greeks, the Armenians in Turkey are officially minorities. They have the right to use their language. They have the right to open their schools, to have some other rights. But the Kurdish people are even not minority in the occupied states, in Turkey, in Syria, in Iraq, and in Iran. Recently, of course, the situation changed in Iraq after the intervention of the United States in Iraq and after the collapse of Saddam's regime. The Kurds, with the new constitution, had the opportunity to have a federal state, Iraq, and one part is the Kurdistan regional region, which has a parliament, which has a government, and they have some rights. But when we look at the other parts, Turkey, Iran, Syria, the Kurds officially are not existing. So, and this is the decision of the Europeans, So, and now we are lobbying for the rights of the Kurdish people in these countries with this logic, with this mentality. So the European institutions, for example, when we look at the Council of Europe, Turkey is also a member of the Council of Europe. That's important for us. The Council of Europe normally was created after the Second World War on 3 main values: human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. Whoever wants to become member of the Council of Europe, they should respect the human rights, the rule of law, and democracy. And Turkey also accepted this and became a member state of the Council of Europe. All the European countries in the European continent are members of the Council of Europe, except Belarus. Belarus has not accepted to become a member of the Council of Europe. They did not sign the Convention of Human Rights. Whoever wants to become member of the Council of Europe, they have to sign the convention, the Human Rights Convention, and then there is a court. If they violate this convention, the court handles these cases, and then they are being fined, or they are being tried in this court. So we are concentrating on the Council of Europe because, as Turkey has signed many treaties and agreements of the Council of Europe, we always want the members of the Council of Europe, the Council of Europe itself, to force Turkey to comply with their obligations. Because to be a member of the Council of Europe is important, because it is a good image of European standards, and Turkey is a member. If Turkey is a member, then it should comply with these standards. If it doesn't comply with these standards, then it should leave. But in the Council of Europe history, there is not an example that a state have been excluded from the Council of Europe or have been sacked out from the Council of Europe. They have been put under the monitoring procedure. They have been criticized a lot, as now they are doing with Turkey. Now Turkey is under the monitoring procedure of the Council of Europe. There are nearly 2-3 times a year meetings, urgent meetings on Turkey to discuss the situation of the opposition, of democratic institutions, of journalists, of our party people in Turkey. And next Friday, they will also have a discussion on Turkey, an urgent debate, and they will accept, they will pass a resolution in this meeting on Friday. It passed from the committee, the monitoring committee, and it is criticizing Turkey, especially because of last operation against HDP, its members of parliament, its mayors. 59 of our mayors have been sacked out of 65 until now, and many of them are in prison. Our co-presidents are in prison. Our former members of parliament, and generally about 5,000 politicians from our party are in prison, and still Turkey is a member of the Council of Europe. So we believe that there should be something more, not only criticize, not only talk, not only put it in the agenda as a matter of urgency, but also act against Turkey. If you don't comply with the Council of Europe standards, then you have to leave. And when we look at the European Parliament, Turkey is not a member of the European Parliament, but is a candidate. Turkey wanted to be a member of the Council of the European Parliament, the European Union. European Union accepted Turkey as a candidate in 1999, and they started negotiations with Turkey in 2005, and now it has been frozen. Why? Because Turkey doesn't want to comply with the European Union's standards. Turkey wants to impose its own criteria to the European Union. We say that in order to become a member of European Union, you have to comply with the Copenhagen criterions first. And there are many other criterions of European Union. Unfortunately, yes, we are working for raising the awareness about the Kurdish question in these institutions. We want to, of course, we are in favor of Turkey to become a member of the European Union. We are in favor of Turkey to stay as a member at the Council of Europe, but with the standards that they have, not with as it is now with the standards of Erdogan. So we supported Turkey to be a candidate of the European Union. But unfortunately, because we believe that if Turkey complies with the standards of the European Union, it will be easier to find a political solution to the Kurdish question. It will be easier to democratize Turkey. It will be easier to have more democratic politics within the system of Turkey if it complies with the standards of Europe. That's why we are supporting. But unfortunately now it is not coming towards the European standards, but it is going further, going out of the standards and becoming like a dictator. So now we believe that being even a candidate of the European Union, because when it is a candidate, they are getting support from the European Union, and European Union members say that it is a candidate for us, so we have to cooperate with Turkey. They have some difficulties with refugees. About 3 million refugees coming from Syria are now in Turkey, and Turkey is looking after them, so we have to help him. Turkey is fighting terrorism. They say terrorism because the European Union put the PKK in terrorist organizations list in 2002. And this is another big problem and big handicap before the political solution to the Kurdish question. Whoever now are in prison from our party are because of relations with the terrorism. Selahattin Demirtas, Figen Yüksekdağ, our mayors, all are being convicted or being tried because of being relations or supporting the PKK or the terrorist organization. And when Europe criticized Turkey because of these acts, they say, I'm fighting terrorism, and you have accepted that the PKK is a terrorist organization, and these politicians have relations with the terrorism, and they are supporting the ideas of terrorism. So PKK has put itself also in a difficult situation by putting the PKK in terrorist organizations list. And it is puts it in a difficult situation to find a political solution to the Kurdish question. And it was in 2002 when the PKK had a ceasefire, they stopped fighting, and even they withdrew all their military forces out of Turkey to give a chance to Turkey to find a political solution to the Kurdish question. And during that time, Europe put the PKK in terrorist organizations list. So it's very important to take out the PKK of this blacklist of the European Union. Then Turkey will not be able to condemn everybody or to make a, how do you say, to use this level against our politicians in Turkey in order to put them in prison or to put them on the courts. So it's important that the European Union take out the PKK out of the terrorist organizations list if they really believe in a political solution to the Kurdish question, which we doubt. The European Union, of course, is a project, but unfortunately, this project, as the situation of Turkey, is going back because now we see that the national states are becoming more powerful in the political arena of the European Union. Instead of having more power to the European Parliament, to the European Council, the Commission, now the nation states have more power in all political issues in the European Union. And this is another problem because now we say Europe, European Union, but it's very difficult to have a decision on any certain question. There are 27 member states now, and it is very hard to agree on one issue. For example, last week, a few days ago, there were some discussions that they will impose some sanctions against Turkey but they did not agree. Germany, especially Germany, Italy, Spain, Poland, Hungary, they did not want any sanctions against Turkey. Even France, Austria, and Slovenia agreed, but most of the others were silent in these issues. So the European Union is very weak as they do not have the power to decide on some issues. And that's why European Union cannot be a political actor, a global political actor in the world. Even it is the biggest economic actor, economic power in the world, unfortunately, when we look at the European Union, they cannot be a political actor in the world in order to find a political solution or a solution to the issues. When we look at the Middle East, we are talking about the United States or Russia. When we look at any other parts of the world, we are generally looking out the decision of United States or Russians. Only European Union is economic power, and they cannot decide on any issues. They have individual relations with different countries. For example, with Turkey, Germany has a lot of economic relations with Turkey. They have a lot of investment in Turkey. There are about 4 million, even maybe more than 4 million Turkish original people or Turkish citizens living in Germany. And most of the refugees who want to come to Europe, first they want to go to Germany. So Germany is very reluctant to allow some sanctions from European Union to Turkey. And they say if there are some sanctions against Turkey, then Turkey will collapse. And if it collapses, then we'll be flooded by the refugees. And among the refugees, many terrorists. But already there are a lot of terrorists sent by Erdogan among the refugees to European countries. And this is another reason that they are very silent against Erdogan. We believe that Erdogan is not only using refugees, not only using other weapons against Europe, but also using the Daesh fighters, the terrorists against Europe. Now there are thousands of Daesh fighters in Libya, and they are ready to come to Europe. Now they are sending them to Azerbaijan to fight Armenia. And there are a lot of other camps. Most of the refugee camps in Turkey are the training camps of jihadists. And we see that they are creating armies now in Idlib. How cannot Europe see what is happening there? Now there is an army of jihadists, the biggest army of jihadists in Idlib, which has been created by Turkey. And unfortunately, European Union, United States are even supporting Turkey because they don't want Russia to be dominant on the region, and they want to have some power through Turkey. But Turkey has another agenda. They have another agenda, and Erdogan now is using these all things against you. And on the other hand, Turkey is playing with both sides, with Russia and with the United States and with Europe. So, but it cannot go on this way. We believe that Europe can stop Turkey if it is really courageous enough. If they have a political will, Europe can stop Turkey. Because now it is the only economy that can be a leverage against Turkey to be used. Because Erdogan cannot go on his power if there is a big crisis, economic crisis in Turkey. They can find weapons everywhere. They can find better weapons from Russia. Yes, of course, the embargo, the sanctions army is also important, but the most important one is economical sanctions. So maybe it's better to have an interactive discussions. I think it will be better to have some questions, some interventions from the other friends, and maybe I can answer their questions. We can discuss this, Sarah.
Yes, absolutely. We've already got a hand up. So Neil, would you like to ask Fayik a question?
Good evening, Fayik. It's nice to share some time with you, and thank you very much for your input. I just wonder if you could help me a little bit on internal Turkish politics, because it's something I really don't know very much about. But the previous Danish MEP was speaking to us, and he suggested in some ways that Erdogan is perhaps not as powerful as he's maybe perceived to be outside of Turkey. And I'm wondering also on what the relative political strength is of the HDP within the country, and if there is any prospect of it taking power in Turkey in the near or middle term future. And if the HDP were to take any power in Turkey, what would be its policy with regard to the Kurdish question? Would it be seeking to give autonomy to the Kurds within Turkey, or would it be seeking to give them independent institutions? I'm thinking of things like education and perhaps the media. But I'd be very interested in hearing any comments which you would like to say about the HDP and its political strength and its policies, because it's something which I know very little about. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, in last local elections, we showed how powerful is HDP. Yes, we are only about 10, 11, 12% in Turkey, but you know, we could change the course of politics in Turkey, and we made Erdogan to lose in all big cities, in Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, Adana, Mersin, Antalya, all big cities, and we got our Kurdish cities, Diyarbakir, Van, Mardin, and many others. So of course, we are mainly getting our votes from Kurdish people. So with these conditions, it is nearly impossible to be the first party in Turkey to come on power as a first party. But of course, we will always be a key party in Turkish politics, and still we are. That's why Erdogan is now putting our friends in prison. There was an interview with Selahattin Demirtas a few days ago, and he said that Erdogan is afraid of us, afraid of me, and he is really weak. That's why he is keeping us in prison. That's why he is dismissing our mayors and appointing his trustees to our municipalities. He cannot do it through elections. Every time he is putting us in prison, he's closing down our parties, he's dismissing our mayors, but other elections we come even with more power. So he cannot defeat us through elections. That's why he is using the other methods. And at the moment, Erdogan is, as Nikolaj said, is really very weak. He is the weakest, in his weakest time since 2002 when he became on power. Now the public opinions show that he is less than 35. 34 when first he came on power in 2002, he got 34% of the votes. But because of the threshold of Turkey, he and CHP also could pass the threshold, and with 34%, he got the 70% of the seats in the parliament. And if HDP becomes on power, of course, our strategy is to find a solution for the Kurdish question within the existing borders, giving more power to the regions. Of course, every part of Kurdistan has different characters, and every system, for example, Iran is different, Iraq is different, Syria is different, and Turkey is different. So in Turkey, it can be a kind of decentralized system which gives more power to the regions, a kind of federal system. which do not depend on ethnicity, but depends on more regions, and give more power, give the opportunity, freedom to the cultural freedom, the language freedom, the education in mother tongue to all peoples, not only Kurdish people, but all ethnicities living in Turkey. This is our main strategy, the coexistence within the existing borders, but with freedoms, with your own identity, with your own language, with your own educational system, and with your own power on your region. For example, Diyarbakir can be a big region in Southeast, and education can be given in Kurdish language, and the taxes can be collected by the local authorities. I mean, to give more power to the regions. That is our main strategy. Having an independent state, of course, Kurdish people, like all other nations in the world, has the right to have their own nation state. But if we have freedoms, if we have all freedoms that as a nation we need, then instead of building new borders, we want to remove all other borders that are existing now before the peoples. That's our philosophy, and this is our strategy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. We've got two people waiting, I think. So Paul and then Vladimir. I mean, they've both sent me questions, but it would be nicer if you asked it, Paul. Can you?
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. Silav, Heval Fayik. So the question is about the role that you mentioned regarding the advocacy with different of the nation states within the Council of Europe or the European Union, given that unfortunately these institutions like the UN are biased in favor of nation states and against unrepresented people. So if we look at Germany, Greece, and Armenia, particularly, I understand all three of those are within the Council of Europe, even though the European Union is more reduced. But there seem to be opportunities there, given the large Kurdish diaspora in Germany, of course, as well the Yazidis in Armenia, and also nations such as Greece and Armenia that have a grievance against the Turks, even either the genocide a century ago against the Greeks and the Armenians, or more recent conflicts like Cyprus. Which there would be an animosity in Greece and in Armenia, particularly also what the Turks are doing in Nagorno-Karabakh right now. So how are advocacy groups able to have that leverage to, given these grievances, in order to try to move these nation states more in favor of Kurds, of women, and of democracy within Turkey, and use that as leverage to try to pressure the Turks into changing their behavior? That's the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Indeed, we are more principle-based. We are following the more principle-based politics, and we don't say that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So we have good relations with all these countries that you mentioned. We have good relations with their delegations, with their members. But we are not only with this. For example, we have good relations with Denmark members, or with French members, or with Austrian members as well. And even there are some countries which are very pro-Turkish. We have very good relations with their members in the Council of Europe and in the European Parliament, etc. So this is important for us, because at the governmental level, the relations are more based on the interests. But at the parliamentary level, or at the other levels, which civil organizations, parliamentarians, democratic institutions, etc., we have bilateral relations with them. And of course, now there are some demonstrations of Armenians against the aggression of Turkey in Karabakh. and supporting Azerbaijan very openly, instead of calling, all the world are calling for them to have a ceasefire, to find a solution through dialogue, but Turkey is encouraging Azerbaijan to go on and attack. So this makes us to think that this war was initiated by Turkey, not by Azerbaijan. It's about 30 years that the problem was there. There was a Minsk group which was negotiating, intermediating with them, trying to find a solution. But when Erdogan is now aggressive towards its neighbors and attacking everywhere, Mediterranean, Libya, Syria, Kurdistan, Iraq, and now Azerbaijan and Armenia. So we think that Erdogan encouraged Azerbaijan and even supported and even pushed to attack this Karabakh region and the Armenians. So, of course, I'm not a historian and I cannot go into the source of the problems there, but I think there should be a political solution to the question and Erdogan should be stopped. So we are supporting people who are asking for a political solution to the conflict and to find a solution through dialogue. We can never support the war or violence in our region, in anywhere. But in the Council of Europe, unfortunately, there are some states which are not complying with the values of the Council of Europe, but supporting each other, especially Turkey and Azerbaijan. They are acting together all the times. Even whenever they have a discussion on one country, if it is on Azerbaijan, in any case, Turkey is supporting Azerbaijan. When there is a discussion on Turkey, Azerbaijan, without any conditions, are supporting Turkey. So this is not the how do you say, the way that the politics are going on in the Council of Europe. Because in the Council of Europe, there are values. And everybody who are here should act according to these values. For example, we have 2 members of parliament as members of delegation, of Turkish delegation. 2 members and 2 substitutes. And we are always criticizing Turkey. Yes, we are a member of Turkish delegation, but we are critical to the Turkish delegation because they are violating all the values of the Council of Europe. So we are in good relations with many members here, even with, we don't have any from Azerbaijan because they are as a bloc acting with Turkish delegation. But in all other countries, we have friends who are supporting our cause. Thank you.
Has that answered your question, Paul?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, good express.
So Vladimir and then Mike.
Yeah, hello. My question to Fayik is basically, why doesn't Erdogan just ban the HDP? They're trying to remove all the mayors, throw them in prison, but in the past, Turkey many times banned pro-Kurdish parties. But this time they haven't seemed to ban yet the HDP. Why do you think what's the reason for that?
Yeah, very shortly, whenever they closed down, we came with another party more powerful. And you know, for the first time, HDP could pass the 10% threshold. Before the HDP, we could not pass 10% threshold, and we were supporting our candidates as independent candidates. They were being elected as independent members of parliament, and then they were coming back to our parties, which was a little bit more difficult. And for the first time with HDP, with the leadership of Selahattin Demirtas, we could pass 10% threshold, and we got 13.2 in 2015 June elections. So he knows very well that if he bans our party, we'll come more powerful. So he wants to paralyze our party wants to have a lot of difficulties to be functional and not to be very active politically and organize itself among the people and give a big hope to the people, try to make it as a source of fear, but not encouragement, not power. So, but now I think there are some attempts and some signs that even they want to ban it. We don't know, but this last wave of attacks on our party, especially after 6 years of the Kobane demonstrations, you know, our party had a tweet calling for people to protest Erdogan and the AKP and support the resistance of Kobane. And Turkish police attacked our people. 53 people died, and 90% of these people were our members, and they were killed by Turkish police. And now Erdogan is accusing our friends, our president, Selahattin Demirtas, our former president, Selahattin Demirtas, Figen Yüksekdağ, Ayhan Bilgen, that time who were at the board of the HDP, they were put in prison. So he's preparing, probably there are some discussions that Erdogan is preparing to close down the party, but we do not have a fear because our people is there, we are there. He cannot put 5-6 million people in the prison. He cannot silence the power of people. Yeah, now 5,000 politicians from our party, leading politicians of our party, are in prison, but again, he cannot push us under the 10% threshold. So we'll continue our struggle and we can come with a more powerful party again.
Thank you. And have you got any follow-up that you want to ask, Vladimir, before I hand over to Mike?
No, that's fine. Thanks a lot for this question.
Mike?
Yes, thanks very much. Really fascinating talk, and obviously for the MEP it was also interesting, but perhaps less so because Britain, UK is no longer in the European Union. So what goes on in institutions there is something we can't affect. But the Council of Europe, as you mentioned, the UK is not just a member, it was a founding member in 1949. And is represented in each of the 3 institutions that the Council of Europe has. I've been looking it up as you've been talking. And obviously the UK government under Dominic Raab as Foreign Secretary is represented in the main body. But within the Parliament of the Council of Europe, we have a member representing the SNP, Scottish National Party from Scotland, Hannah Bardell. And within the what's called the Assembly of Regions, we have a representative of the Scottish Parliament, Angela Constance, who's also a member of the SNP. So you mentioned, Faye, that you had friends in the delegations, and what I wanted to know was, is there anything, presumably these 2 members do consist of friends, and is there anything we can do to inform and involve them, not just in the work that they're doing in Strasbourg, but also back here in Scotland? But the second thing is, you said you wanted Turkey to remain a member of the Council of Europe. And I've been reading a very interesting article called Suspension and Expulsion of Members from the Council of Europe, written in an international law journal last year, that particularly talks about whether Turkey should be suspended or expelled from the Council of Europe. It has been suspended previously during the military coup in 1980. So it's a matter not without precedent. And this article raises the whole question about the processes and the fact that if member states of the Council of Europe are themselves violating the whole principles of the Council of Europe, then should suspension or indeed expulsion, which is allowed for under the Constitution of the Council of Europe, be embraced. And I wasn't clear whether you said you want them to remain in. So is not the threat of suspension or expulsion a tactic that could be used within member states of the Council of Europe to put more pressure on governments, even if it's unlikely to happen? I mean, Russia is a member of the Council of Europe. It invaded another member of the Council of Europe, Ukraine, and took away part of their, what was recognized as their sovereign territory, Crimea. And so this article particularly talks about, as well as Turkey and Azerbaijan, the whole question of Russia, but Russia was condemned, and there are other sanctions that the Council of Europe can take. So should we be campaigning both in Scotland and in the UK for them to take a much tougher line on Turkey and to actually consider the issue of suspension over their treatment, for example, of imprisoning the HDP mayors and leaders?
Yep. First, I want to say that because of this coronavirus period, the Council of Europe sessions are not being held in Strasbourg. So it is 3 sessions that have been postponed. So they cannot come here. That's why if the parliaments, the national parliaments are functioning, of course, we call on all members of Council of Europe to raise the issues that they were discussing here. For example, as I said, on 23, Turkey will be discussed on the Council of Europe Standing Committee, and a report will be discussed there, and there will be some decisions there. So the members of the Council of Europe from the national parliaments can raise the same issues in the national parliaments and push the government to have a voice against the Turkish practices, against our party and our politicians, democratic institutions, journalists, etc. So this can be done in the national parliaments as well. The other thing, yeah, we want Turkey to stay in the Council of Europe and even be a member of the European Union. We supported it, but not with this situation as a dictator. Of course, as a dictator should not be in the Council of Europe. A dictator cannot be a member of the European Union. And now, unfortunately, Turkey is going towards being a full dictatorship. So we believe that European Union and Council of Europe has enough power to stop Turkey to be a dictator. They have enough. They can stop Erdogan from this way. So we don't want Turkey to be like Iran. We want Turkey to be in connection with the European Union, with Europe, not with Iran or like Iraq or like Syria or like other Middle East countries. We want Turkey to be in a part of the European institutions that has some really some standards that we can have a better democratic life there. That's why we want Turkey to be here. But of course, it should not be tolerated. It should not be tolerated as now, as it is doing now. For example, we are electing our mayors, and a few months later, Erdogan is not the courts. The interior minister is dismissing our mayors, and he's appointing his governor, and he's putting the mayors, elected mayors, in prison. In which kind of democracy you can see this? So this should not be tolerated. Erdogan should be stopped, either to be expelled or either to be suspended from the Council of Europe and membership of the European Union. That's our view on this issue. Thank you.
Is that okay, Mike? Do you want to? Yeah.
Well, the question is, at what point do you say it's gone too far? You can put pressure on them now, and there's a very critical report from a visit last year on the Council of Europe website by the Human Rights Commissioner, saying that they're violating commissions. The point about the article I raised is that suspension, and suspension doesn't mean that you get rid of them, it means that they are removed from the decision-making bodies of the Council. And as I said, Turkey has already been suspended when it was a military dictatorship in 1980. And therefore that precedent has been set. And therefore, what is the right time to demand the through our elected parliaments, and we have representatives within the Council of Europe, to demand that they be suspended unless they reverse their course and restore the right of law and human rights?
Now, Turkey is under the monitoring procedure. You know, if a country, when a country becomes a member of the Council of Europe, they are first put in the procedure, the monitoring procedure, and the Council of Europe is monitoring these countries, whether they comply with the standards of the Council of Europe or not, and then they accept them. But after become a member without any monitoring, then if they go back to the monitoring procedure, it is really a terrible image for a country. And now Turkey is under the monitoring procedure again, which is really a very bad image for a country. So I think now, after these old practices of Erdogan on democratically elected members of parliament and the mayors, and his attacks on neighbors, for example, in Syria, there was a report of the United Nations that Turkey and the other mercenaries who are supported by Turkey are violating the war crimes and even the crimes against humanity in occupied areas in north of Syria. So, and in Libya now, Turkey is in Libya as well, in Middle East, in the Mediterranean Sea, in Azerbaijan. So these all policies, I think, should encourage the people to suspend the membership of Turkey at the Council of Europe. Not dismiss it at all, but to suspend until they fulfill their obligations, the standards of the Council of Europe. It should not be, for example, delegation of Turkey is coming here and they are voting for many things. They are at some commissions. They are at everywhere. So they have a representation here. The Turkish Foreign Affairs Minister is represented at the Committee of Ministers, which is the executive body of the Council of Europe. So with these practices, Turkey do not deserve this. Turkey should be suspended. I think suspended now. It is a time, I think.
Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Said.
Yep. Hi, Fayik. As you know, the HDP came to the core as a result of the so-called peace process. So after 8 years of the HDP, Turkish government has put all the active MPs of the HDP, especially the one from Northern Kurdistan, in the prison. And most of them are in diaspora at the moment. And state has removed all the political gains and removed the elected mayors by the appointed governors. So at this time, don't you think that the HDP need a retransformation or a transformation of its strategy? So as a goodwill of the Kurdish politics, they wanted democratization of Turkey, then solve Kurdish process, Kurdish question. Now, don't you think that it came to vice versa? The Kurdish question should be solved as the right of self-determination of Kurdish people. So Turkey doesn't want democratization. Want a state for Northern Cyprus, for 40,000 Turks, and supporting Azerbaijan to take over 90% Armenian populated Nagorno-Karabakh, but doesn't want to accept a democratic status for 30 million Kurds in Northern Kurdistan. Do you think there is a time for transformation? Thank you. That's my question.
what do you mean with transformation? What kind of
transformation of that Turkey should be democratized and Kurdish question will be solved. Then vice versa. Kurdish question must be solved. Turkey will be democratized.
Indeed, we do not have a distinction between having democracy in Turkey and to find a political solution to the Kurdish question, or to find a political solution, then you will have democracy in Turkey. Both are very closely connected to each other. And we do not have a, priority for this. We believe that without finding a political solution to the Kurdish question, it's impossible to democratize Turkey. And even it is impossible to find a solution, political solution to the Kurdish question without democratization of Turkey. These are connected to each other. Of course, if it's possible that you can militarily defeat the Turkish army and have an independent Kurdistan and then have a good relations with Turkey, this is another thing. This is not something that HDP can do through transformation. But we believe that we should insist on this policy, and we should insist on democratic politics. We believe that through democratic politics we can defeat Erdogan. Now Erdogan is weak politically, maybe stronger militarily, but weak politically. So we should insist on democratic struggle in Turkey. You remember when there was a peace process from 2013 to 2016, indeed not 16, 15. We succeeded to pass 10% threshold, and we had 6 million votes with 80 members in the parliament. And everybody in Turkey were all talking about the Kurdish people, the rights of Kurdish people. Even many Turkish people supported HDP, supported Selahattin Demirtas that time. So if we have the opportunity to really have a political process or a peaceful process in Turkey, we believe that it is more possible to defeat Erdogan. That's why Erdogan stopped the peace process and he decided to fight, because he knows that we do not have arms as he has, or we do not have flights, or do not have economical power as he has to fight. But we have we are more reasonable. Our politics are better for the future of Turkey. So politically we can convince people to support us, but to vote against Erdogan. So we should insist on this democratic struggle. And as I said, both are connected to each other. The democratization of Turkey and the solution of Kurdish question are very connected to each other. Thank you.
Sorry? Yeah.
However, if you look at it now, the situation, the CHP also, if CHP instead of Erdogan wins, that it is the cause of the Kurdish question since 1923 to 1990s. That's the state. The problem is the mentality of Turkish state, or not AKP. AKP has been surrendered to the Ergenekon at the moment.
Yeah.
So the state doesn't want to change. There should be a retransformation of the state, totally. So one party goes, the other one comes, and then the mentality is the same. They don't mention that Kurds are a nation, and it is a national right of self-determination. They don't mention that. They only say there's a problem of the backwardness or economic backwardness, that's it. But the mentality of the state is institutionalized and doesn't accept even.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem, and that's why we have a problem with this mentality, and we want to change this mentality. the mentality is not only Erdogan. Of course, all political parties in Turkey, MHP, E Party, CHP, all have the same mentality. But of course, now at the moment, the dictatorial approach of Erdogan is more dangerous than everybody. And he is following completely the politics of MHP, the very nationalist party. And so we have to stop this first to be able to struggle democratically within the Turkish parliament, Turkish institutions, etc. And then try to change this mentality before at the political level and also at the social level, the societies. Also, we have to change the mentality of the society as well. And we are going forward, I must tell you. During the elections in 2015, many people, even they used to vote for MHP, they voted for HDP, and they said, we like Selahattin Demirtas because we believe that he can be the prime minister of Turkey and he can change Turkey, he can democratize Turkey, he can bring Turkey closer to the European Union, etc., etc. So many people who were voting for MHP also could vote for. So if we have the opportunity to really express our ideas, have the freedom of expression in Turkey, as we did during the peace process in 2013, 14, and 15, we can change the Turkish society as well and change this mentality. We trust on ourselves. Thank you.
I think I can ask a question now. That's nice. I'm going to take us back to Europe and actually want to ask about the way Turkey uses their sometimes soft power, sometimes not very soft, within European states. So, for example, in my hometown of Cambridge, in funding a mosque and trying to win people over that way, but then sometimes rather more violently when you see them supporting nasty attacks on Kurdish institutions in Austria and stuff. So I was wondering if you could comment a bit about how Turkey does act in other European states and what sort of reaction there is from the governments in those states. What sort of level of awareness is there of what's going on, or are they just happily looking the other way?
Yeah, especially AKP started organizing itself in Europe since its foundation. And they started organizing themselves through the mosques and then some economical investments and among the society. And they used economy, they used the freedoms of belief, the freedom of thought which is existing in Europe, and they organized themselves, especially through some organizations. Religious organizations, economical organizations. But now we see that even they found a political party in France, and then it was not successful, so they closed it down. And now we see that in Germany, in France especially, the governments woke up and now they say, okay, stop. And now they are trying to especially do something especially about the religious organizations, especially mosques. And they want to struggle against these organizations, which are the supportive of AKP and Erdogan in European countries. And sometimes they are not only democratically struggling in these countries, but also, as we saw in Paris, as we saw in Austria, in some other countries, in Germany, they are planning to kill some people, to kidnap some people, to work for Turkish intelligence service. Whoever goes to Turkey to go in prison because of their relations here with the Kurdish organizations, etc., etc. So now European countries, before they tolerated a lot, but now they woke up. Especially a few days ago, you know, one person in Paris, a teacher, was killed, was beheaded by an extreme Islamist. And now there are very big discussions in France to stop this Islamist activities in France. And it is the same for the other countries. I know that Germany also now is trying to do something against the activities of Turkish intelligence service in Germany. Austria, I know that now they are trying to do something about the Turkish activities, the activities of AKP through some religious organizations in Europe. They are trying to do something against them. First, they tolerated, and they got it as within the frame of freedom of religion, freedom of thought, etc. But now, as Erdogan went past the borders, now they are trying to do something to stop him.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a real shame in Cambridge. It's a really beautiful mosque, and as an architect, I'd really like to go and see it, but I don't think I should. I know it was just shocking to see that it was all Turkish money, and that's very soft power trying to win people over. Mike, you still got your hand up. If you still got your hand up, or if you got your hand up again, that's it's still hand up. So, Fayik, do you want to say any final words? Because no one else is.
Okay. Yeah, we are done. I think nearly everybody here are from Europe. So we, of course, we Kurds are trying our best to raise the Kurdish issue within the European institutions and within the national parliaments, with trade unions, civil organizations, among the society, people, etc. We call on all our friends to be the voice of Kurdish people in their own countries. If possible, in the parliaments, in the governments, in trade unions, in the civil organizations, in their districts, everywhere that they can, to be the voice of the Kurdish people. The Kurdish people are the most progressive people in the Middle East. So the success of Kurdish people really can be a blow on these radical Islamist groups. It can be a new era for the democratic life in Middle East, which will have a big impact on the life of Europe and everywhere in the world. So supporting the Kurdish people, the success of Kurdish people in Rojava, in Turkey, in Iraq, Iran, everywhere, of course, will be a support for the progressive forces everywhere in the world. That's my last call to our friends. And thank you very much for inviting me. And thank you for everybody for listening to me and for their questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Fayik. Thanks very much. And yes, of course, we're all going to go on fighting for the Kurds wherever we are. Thank you.
Thank you.